Hi boys, so today we're doing something called converting square units. Now this is really badly done in tests, so if you remember it for the exam, you'll be doing really well because a lot of boys in year 7 are not going to remember this. Okay, so we'll start off by just going through the basics. You need to be knowing your conversions that we've already done so far because this is going to build on that. So when you convert to square units, you multiply or divide by the number that we've learned from our prefixes, but that number has to be squared. Okay, this is going to come into a few of our conversions later, so I'll just go through what this is. A hectare, which has an abbreviation of HA, is an area. It doesn't have square units written on the end of it. Okay, so a hectare is about this size. So we've got, if you can imagine a square, and we have a 100-metre sprint track down one side, and another 100-metre sprint track going this way, that's how big the area would be for 1 hectare. So if you multiply those two, and you've got a calculator, so just use your calculator to multiply 100 times 100, you will get 10,000. So that means that 1 hectare equals 10,000 metres squared. So you do need to know that. It's up to you how you learn it, but I've told you this just to help you, give you a little reminder. It's like a 100-metre sprint track times a 100-metre sprint track is 10,000 metres squared. But we don't write squared on the hectare. So it is an area measurement, but we don't write 1 hectare squared. We just write 1 hectare. Okay, and that's how big it is. Okay, now, I'm going to show you how to do this converting. So what we're doing here is converting from 0.5 metres squared to millimetres squared. Now just imagine you're just doing metres to millimetres. Alright, so we're going to a smaller unit. And when you go to a smaller unit, you multiply. And you multiply by whatever number the prefix tells you. So remember, we look at the one with the 2 letters. That one's got 2 letters. Milli means 1,000. So we're going to times by 1,000, but don't just do that, because if you do that, you're going to get it wrong. And a lot of boys in your year will do that. When you see the squared here and the squared here, you also put a squared there. So what we're going to do on our calculator is 0.5 times 1,000 squared. So if I get my calculator and show you, this is how we're pressing it in. Okay, so we're going to put 0.5 times, and then we want to put in 1,000 squared. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 1,000, and then your squared button is up the top here. Okay, so we're going to press that button up the top. Squared, it puts the squared up the top, and then we press equals, and it gives you that number, 500,000. So we write down our number, 500,000, and just write your units millimetres squared on the end. Okay, let's look at the next one. So we have 12,200 centimetres squared. We're going to metres squared. So we're going to a bigger unit. When we go bigger, we divide. Here's your prefix. Centi is 100, and then if that's squared and that's squared, you have a squared there. Okay, so same thing, go to your calculator, we're going to type in 12,200, then we're pressing divided by, then we're pressing 100 squared, 100, and then don't forget the squared button is up on the top row there where it says x squared. Press it, press equals, and you get 1.22. So we write 1.22 and write your metres squared on the end. Okay, so let's look at the next one. So we're going from metres squared to millimetres squared. We're going to a smaller unit, so we're multiplying. Milli is 1,000. So put the 1,000 down. If you have squared here and squared here, you have squared here. So in your calculator, you're going to type 0.75 times 1,000. Don't forget you're pressing that x squared key. That's what the key looks like. And then press equals, and you'll get 750,000. Put millimetres squared on the end. Let's look at the next one. We're going from centimetres squared to metres squared. We're going to a bigger unit, so we divide. Centi is 100. If that's squared and that's squared, the 100 will be squared as well. And in your calculator, you're typing 865,000 divided by 100. Press the x squared button, equals. And you'll get 86.5 metres squared. Looking at the next one, we're going from metres squared to centimetres squared. We're going to a smaller unit, so we multiply. Centi is 100. If this is squared and this is squared, the 100 is squared. So you're typing in 0.47 times 100 and press the x squared key up the top. And you will get, on your calculator, 4,700 centimetres squared. Now looking at the next one, this one's a bit tricky. You've got to remember what we do on this. So we are going from centimetres squared to millimetres squared. Now millimetres squared is smaller, so we're timesing. Now this time, we're not looking for our prefix because we've got two prefixes and we don't know which one to look at. So think of your ruler. Look at your ruler. Remember that 1 centimetre equals 10 millimetres? So here's our magic number. We're using 10. So we put the 10 there. And if this is squared and this is squared, that's squared as well. So we're pressing 15 times 10. Press the x squared button at the top, equals, and it'll give you 1,500 and write your millimetres squared on the end. Okay, next one. Millimetres squared to centimetres squared. We're going to a bigger unit this time. So when we go bigger, we're dividing. We're not looking at the prefix because there's two of them. So remember your ruler. 1 centimetre equals 10 millimetres, so we're going to use 10. If this is squared and this is squared, so will that be squared. So we're doing 690 divided by 10 squared equals 6.9. Put your units on the end. Alright, now we're getting over to this one with the hectares in it. HA means hectares. So, we're going from hectares to metres squared. Now, I told you how big that hectare was. 1 hectare is a 100 metre sprint track by a 100 metre sprint track. That's a really big area. And a metre squared is only 1 metre by 1 metre. So it's a lot smaller. So we're going to a smaller unit. Smaller means we're timesing. Now, we don't have anything up the top here. We've got a squared here, but not a squared here. So you've got to remember what we learnt over here. 1 hectare equals 10,000 metres squared. So we'll write it down next to this question so you can see we're using it. Now, I've just written the abbreviation there, HA. So 1 HA equals 10,000 metres squared. That's our number we're using, 10,000. Now, you don't need to put any squared on that because the squared has to be on both of these and it's not. So we're just going to multiply by 10,000 this time. So all you're typing in your calculator is 0.32 times 10,000. And if you do that, you'll get 3,200 metres squared. Now, if they want to give you a word problem on this, they might give you something like this. You've got to just read through it and sort of ignore the words you don't need. So it says, a square tile has an area of 1,024 centimetres squared. That's all we really need to be looking at. You don't need to read all those other words. Then it says, write this area in millimetres squared. So all we're doing is doing 1024 centimetres squared, and we're converting it to millimetres squared. And you know you do that by saying, I'm going to a smaller unit, because millimetres are smaller than centimetres. So I'm timesing. Now remember our ruler. 1 centimetre equals 10 millimetres. So we're going to times by 10. We're not looking at the prefix this time because there's two prefixes and it's confusing. If that's squared and that's squared, this is squared. And then you put it in your calculator. You're just putting in 1024 times 10 squared equals, and you will get that number, and then put your millimetres squared on the end. Okay, let's look at this next one. We're converting to metres squared. So we're going to take what we had at the beginning, 1024 centimetres squared, and convert to metres squared. Metres squared are bigger than centimetres squared. So we are dividing by, now we will look at the prefix this time because there's only one of them. Centi is 100. And if this is squared and this is squared, the 100 will be squared as well. So you're putting in your calculator 1024 divided by 100 squared equals, and you will get that answer. Okay, so we'll leave it there and you can practice some of these for homework. Good luck, boys.